Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Emelia. Emelia, lovely to see you. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yep, it'll be a blast.
It'll be a blast. So this is Emelia Thygesen. She is a fellow adoptee, and she's also a licensed mental health counsellor. And we spoke just yesterday for the kind of little chat about what we're going to chat about. And you mentioned the word attachment, and I thought, well, I don't know much about attachment. Maybe it's something that I should learn a little bit about, and maybe learning about that might help me, and it might help the listeners. So why is attachment such a big issue, do you think?
Personally or professionally?
Well, let's start with the personal.
Okay.
Let's start with the personal, and then go into the professional. It's a tricky thing. So sometimes I ask people such as yourselves to kind of bring both bits to both bits of your experience, and then sometimes I think it's better to kind of divide them up. But I think we'll start by looking at that personally, if that's okay with you. And obviously, you don't need to reveal as much as you want to reveal. I'm not going to ask any prying questions.
Yeah. I mean, I think attachment personally plays a huge role, especially being adopted. And I think we all try to fill that hole in our life with different things, whether it be people, whether it be, food, whether it be an addiction. I think it's really important and something to remember and think about when it comes to being an adoptee. And it's definitely played a huge role in my life. I spent a really long time trying to fill it with people, and I'd get really super quickly attached to people and find myself back in the same situation that I always ended up when I was with my adopted family. So I think that definitely taught me a lot and about the importance of learning from ourselves, and also, going to therapy and doing the work that we need to do to figure out how to have healthier attachments with people in our lives.
Yeah. So are you talking about the mother-shaped hole? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I think a lot of it comes from the mother hole, definitely, or the hole in our heart, as I like to call it. But I think also it can come from other things, like not having, stable relationships in your life, or not having close supportive family. I mean, there's many different ways to look at it besides, the whole blank slate theory and, you're born with a certain, temperament, and then what kind of attachment style you have. I think there's just a lot more that goes into it, especially when you're adopted.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about this kind of yesterday. There's some technical stuff here, like about attachment styles. People can Google that. It's quite, like if this podcast seems like it's landing for you listeners, then I would encourage you to kind of Google around these attachment styles and dig a bit deeper. If we get into a scientific presentation of attachment styles by Emelia, then it's not going to get as far, and it's not really the place, because what we're trying to do is, as you said yesterday, we're trying to have a down-to-earth conversation. I think that's what you said that you liked about the other interviews that you'd heard. So, the mother-shaped hole. Funnily enough, we did one of the podcasts that I released today, that I recorded yesterday, was started from that same premise. And I think we're looking, there is only one thing really, is there? We're looking at adoptee issues, and there's looking at the same issues through different perspectives. That's why it's 99% of the episodes that I've done have been interviews, because I'm looking to bring in different perspectives, not simply share my perspective. So there's crossover there's crossover between topic areas, and but different perspectives on those topic areas. So how do you see that, the importance of that whole, and addressing the whole through your professional work?
Oh, my professional work. I think it works differently for different people, you know. Some people it's the ache of not being able to find biological family, and that's what the whole is. And sometimes it's the whole of, you know, not feeling loved, um, you know, or just not feeling in place. You know, and there's some people that, you know, don't think about it at all and don't understand how it can have an impact.
Yeah.
But I
Did you
think
say the word in place? Did you say
did
in
I?
place? Yeah. Do you, like you, so you said, so you talked about the ache for biological family, not
Yep.
being loved, and then I think you
Yes.
said in place, but maybe I misheard you. Are you talking about like kind of feeling grounded, secure in
Yeah, or like feeling they fit in, because I hear
Oh
that a
yeah,
lot from people that, you know, nobody really feels like they fit in, even with all the different families they may have in their life, whether it's adopted or biological.
yeah, yeah. Uh, for me, seeing that some of our stuff is shared by our non-adopted friends and counterparts, uh, that somehow, I find that somehow freeing. So I see this not fitting in, because I've done a lot of work on myself pretty much outside the adoption community. For the first 54 years of my life, I didn't spend any time in the adoption community at all, and for like probably 14 years I did. And there's some, I don't know why. Maybe that's a question for you. It feels kind of freeing that it's not just, some of the stuff that I feel isn't just an adoptee thing.
Yeah, it's definitely comforting. I've met a lot of people that aren't adopted, and they kind of go through the same phases that we may have gone through, where, you know, have the same issues with their family.
Yeah, yeah. I as I can't find anything more profound than the fact that realizing non-adopted people don't fit in, feel that they don't fit in, and sometimes feel a disconnection from themselves, actually opens up our resource library. You know, our you know, like our healing library. Do you see
Yeah,
what I mean? Because
yeah.
otherwise we're just looking for answers from adoptee books. So I saw
Hmm.
something on Facebook yesterday, and it was saying, you know, I'm interesting one. So he was 2 years younger than me, so he's adopted 69, and he said, I'm looking. I don't feel any anger. Blah blah blah. I don't feel any anger. I'm looking for some books to help me. I'm in therapy. Blah blah. And everybody recommended adoption books, and
Hmm.
I said, well, I'd have a look in non-adoption books as well, because
Yeah.
I I don't think I think that broadens up our horizons. It broadens up our options. Um, we can look to different places to heal. So, like, if we, the Dalai Lama, for example, isn't adopted. So, but he has plenty of stuff to say that can, you know, that is valuable. And there's plenty of other great authors and speakers that we can learn from if
Hmm.
we look outside the pure kind of adoption
Yeah, I
space.
agree with that. I'm a big fan of Buddha.
Yeah,
I recommend a lot of poetry, and I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned in moving forward by shifting ourselves to not just focus on one issue, but to include all issues, right?
yeah,
You know, Do you have problems with your family? Do you have problems communicating? Do you have problems expressing yourself? You know, there's so much more than to just only blame one thing on what you're struggling with.
So I heard this from a Buddhist influenced person, I think, said, if you think you're enlightened, go for Christmas lunch with your family. You know, like it's the difference between being in a laboratory space like we're in, where the outside world isn't impacting us, and then being in the field, in the thick of it, in the thick of a family dinner, or you know, there's a story about certain parts of the UK where it's not a proper wedding unless there's a fight, right?
I'm pretty sure they could say that in America too.
Yeah. So what do you get from the Buddha or non-adopted teachers that helps you fill the hole?
I think it's a big practice in being more present. Because I find we always are scrambling for something, right? We're scrambling for an excuse, or we're scrambling to fill the hole, or we're scrambling to, I don't know, to always be busy all the time. That's a huge thing right now. And for me, I think like Buddhist teachings, yoga, meditation, stuff like that is really helpful because it keeps you grounded and more present. And that to me is way more important than spending my time aching over things, you know, and keeping myself negative all the time, which I definitely used to be when I was younger, doom and gloom all the time, you know. I'll never be happy if I don't find my biological family, or, you know, I'll never be happy because I hate where I am in life, or whatever the issue might have been at the time, you know. It's always just like, they call it that like gray cloud that follows you everywhere because you're so sucked into all of that all the time.
Yeah. So what Buddhist kind of stuff comes to mind around this presence? Isn't it something like the end of suffering? Is it? I don't know. I've heard a few people that.
Oh, well, Buddha teaches a lot about attachment. Again, attachment is the core of most of the suffering. So that to me is a very important teaching, that, you know, we can't rely on other people to fix us, right? Can't rely on partners, friends, whoever it might be, a parent figure. We can't rely on someone else to heal us or make us feel better. You know, we have to be able to, you know, work within and what we can control and what we can do. So that's a big one for me. I just took a course in mindful self-compassion earlier this year. That was extremely helpful to be more present, to deal with your emotions in the moment, and to, you know, not avoid them or push them away for long periods of time, and to be more present with ourselves and, you know, enjoy life, you know, put down your phone a little bit more.
Yeah.
Pretend it's 95 for 5 minutes.
Yeah. There's something like a little discrepancy running for me here. I mean, not discrepancy, maybe paradox is, I think that might be the word.
Oh, I like that better. Paradox.
Yeah. So when we were talking about attachment and the conversation today, I said, well, as all I know basically about attachment is that there are these different attachment styles that I've heard people talk about, and also my kind of what's the word for it? My peg in the wall of attachment is my sister asking me if I'd ever considered finding my real mum and dad, and I said no, mum and dad are our real mum and dad, right? And that happened when I was 10, 12, she would be 8 to 10, something around that. And I mention it quite a lot because in the podcast, because it's kind of my linchpin, probably my linchpin. It's for me the kind of evidence that I did feel attached to my parent. So my adoptive parents, my parents. So on that side, we're thinking attachment is a good thing. I'm saying it. My meaning I'm giving attachment is I was well attached to my parents. That's a good thing. What you're suggesting now is the Buddha is saying attachment is at the core of suffering. So that means that attachment is a bad thing. So,
well, I think it depends on your perspective, right? Like, are we saying broadly stating all attachment's bad? No. I think Buddha was just focusing on the things that pull us down, right?
The things that pull us down, yeah.
Yeah, that are heavy and not like when we're trying to fill something,
yeah,
you know, and not saying all attachment's bad or that we don't need it. We certainly need attachment. We probably need more interdependency than we do to rely on people for more things, but definitely not saying it's a broad statement, we don't need it, period, but just saying to not be as focused as like this is the answer to everything.
I guess I'm just giving that because I can see that paradox. I can see it's way too simple. Right, as soon as I ask the question, I can see it's way too simple, and yet by raising it, I think it takes us down an interesting path where we realize that stuff isn't as black and white, true or false.
Oh yeah, right.
As we think it should be. So what? And also, I'm thinking about there's that adult phase, there's the kid phase, and the adult phase. So a teacher of mine who'd been, a guy called Rupert Spira, I name check him quite a lot on the show because he's such a great guy. He talks about being dumped at 21 by a girl he'd been going out with for 4 years, and he thought he was going to get married and have 4 kids and live happily ever after. For at 21, she dumped him in a 2-minute phone call, and that made him realize that as an adult, he shouldn't be putting his happiness, hanging his happiness on anybody else, which is kind of more like the Buddha stuff, I guess, is it? I mean,
yeah, but that's a huge thing to go through, right?
Yeah, and a huge learning he took from that. I don't know whether in the learning came in the grief of the loss or afterwards. My guess it probably came a little bit afterwards. But where do you see Sorry about that, listeners. We just had a crying puppy next door because somebody's coming home. What do you see or in hindsight, what do you see yourself attaching to? Or if you don't want to answer that question, what do you see your adoptee clients attaching their happiness on?
Oh wow. I don't know. I think people use tons of different things. I mean, other people, that's a huge one, relationships, using substances, drinking, Food's a big one. A lot of adoptees struggle with disordered eating or not eating properly, and that comes from a whole other plethora of issues as well. But I think it depends on the person, right? And what do they feel is filling that hole for them. For me personally, it was just going to person to person to person, and I kept trying to attach to people that I knew that weren't healthy for me, and I kept expecting them to change. And it was a hard lesson to learn in life, but finally kind of got over that hump and realized that I didn't need other people to make me happy, and I didn't need to rely on other people to fill that hole for me.
Yeah. How did you come to that realization?
Oh man, I've been burned way too many times by people. I grew up in a very toxic household, and I learned from a really early age that I was attracted to not like relationships, but just like friendships. I was attracted to the same type of person that was very like self-centered and narcissistic. So then I would always, for some reason, always thought those were the type of people I needed to be around. So you kind of learn the hard way when you're giving way more than people are giving back, and being more of a caretaker than you are a friend.
Yeah.
So I definitely got burned way too many times, and the last time was the last time. So then I, changed the people I was surrounding, and definitely is a better atmosphere to be in for sure.
Yeah. You hear that, I don't know if this is a Buddhist thing, is like, sometimes you get a tap on the shoulder, another tap on the shoulder, another tap on the shoulder, and then a lump of timber over the head, something like that. It's I'm thinking like the Buddhist says, chop wood, doesn't he? But it's a cumulative effect, and then there's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's the final time you fall for that, and there's an insight, there's an aha moment off the back of that.
Yeah. I think it's hard to break any cycle, no matter what kind of cycle it is, because our brains are so accustomed to it, all the highs and lows. So we have to kind of train ourselves to be okay with normal, healthy relationships. So it can be difficult for some
Yeah.
people.
So, what breaks the cycle, do you think?
Oh, well, having an aha moment, that's
Yeah.
good. I think coming to the realization that, things aren't gonna fill that hole, right? It's kind of like when you're young, people say you should always get a job that makes a ton of money, right? Because then you're going to be happy and be able to afford X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, money isn't going to make you happy. It's how you choose to live your life and the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So, probably also listening to a lot less people that, are giving you bad advice and, you know,
Yeah. So how's this relationship? Because you talk about you talked about other people, attachment to other people, attachment to relationships, food and drink, and that's attachment. But is some of that sounds like numbing as well? Are these two things? How do those two things sit together?
well, from my perspective, I think attachment is, like you said with your friend, it's like relying on other people to make you happy, but you can also rely on substances, right? So I think it's kind of interchangeable in how we perceive what an attachment is. I mean, then we could go down the rabbit hole of like addictions and dependency, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
But I think it's all how a person perceives it, right? I mean, the same thing could be said having no attachments whatsoever. That's an attachment issue. A lot of times we just cut people off, and then we like cut everybody off, because if we don't have anyone around, then no one can hurt us anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about perspective and what is comforting, even if it's not healthy for a person.
So that's avoidant, is it? And now I guess we're into the attachment. We're into the attachment types, are we? Is it avoidant? I don't know. Something's going off in my
Oh, yeah,
avoidant.
secure. It's
Yeah.
secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized.
Okay. Um, so people can, as I said, people can Google those attachment styles. Do different. Oh well, let's do it, and let's do it another way. What questions can we ask ourselves? How do we get to those realizations? We can get to those realizations by listening to someone on a podcast. We can get to the realization by asking ourselves some questions. We can get to those realizations by seeing a counselor like yourself. What do you think leads? What's the most powerful way to those realizations in your experience?
Well, knowing that you have, long-lasting and healthy relationship, that you feel like secure with the people that you're around, and you feel like that they respect you. Feeling safe. People that are emotionally available and not, avoiding or emotionally unavailable, when you need them.
Yeah. So what's popping into my head is some sort of, I think I did one of these actually. That's why it's popping into my head. There are attachment questionnaires, aren't there?
Yeah, there's
Right.
a lot of assessments on the internet that you can take to figure out what your attachment style is, or what you might need to work on.
Yeah. That's what must have been lodged in the back of my head as a memory. We don't often do that on this show in terms of advising people particular strategies. Do you find these questionnaires revealing? Have you had any? Sorry, well, first of all, have you had any experience with them? Do you?
I think it's like any other assessment. I mean, you take it as you want to take it. I mean, it can be helpful for people. I think a lot of people nowadays really want labels so that they can feel they understand themselves better, or like they have a name to a problem, or or how they're feeling, and that's totally valid. And if that's going to help someone to be able to improve their life, then great, right? But we also shouldn't make it an excuse either for how we are, right? Or why we act the way we are, more of a deeper understanding.
Yeah, there's a relief with a label, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
But then the label can kind of take over. I love the juxtaposition of this kind of like ultra psychological, steady away, logical basis of doing attachment questionnaires and Buddha stuff. I think that's an interesting conundrum. I was chatting to an adoptee yesterday, and after we'd done, I asked him what he was into listening to, and he told me that he was into one particular genre. And I said, have you ever thought about doing something completely opposite to that? And he did, actually. He is doing that. So he was, some of it was real hardcore mindset stuff. But the other stuff that he sometimes dipped into was far more of a Western, Eastern sort of philosophical, mystical sense. How do you see that? How useful have these two different approaches been to you?
Well, I think it's hard for some people to go deeper. And I think you have to kind of be at the right point in your life, or be ready to take that step to be able to look beyond what, surface level. Like I'm a huge philosophy person. I could talk about Buddha and Plato, and I could talk about that all day. Because I'm a huge fan of the gray area, and that that there's more than life than just black and white. And
well,
I'm not a huge.
You riff from that, Emelia. You riff from that. You take us where you want to take it where you want to go. What's your passion? What drives that passion for you?
Oh, The gray area? I think because we're programmed when we're kids, right? No matter how you're raised a certain way, right? And people want you to believe in certain things. And I think that, when I was a kid, I was like, I don't believe in these certain things, you know. I believe that there's middle ground, that, nothing is always what it seems, or you can't just be always on one side and not the other. And
Yeah,
I think it's really important for people to be aware of that, because that's also is how we treat ourselves, right?
but we
So
don't see
if
that programming, do we? That's the thing. We've been living with it so much; it's become
Mhm.
part. It's become part and parcel of us. And so seeing through the program seeing through the programming that we have innocently taken on from the world is the key thing, right?
Yeah, it's just rough, because some people, it takes a lot to, uncover that, to be able to get to that place where we can talk about things that are uncomfortable, or, to look at different perspectives that are not our own. I think
Yeah,
that's a big deal right now in social media and society, is everyone's very polarized. So
yeah. And
definitely hard to.
the algorithm is driving that polarization, isn't it? And
Yes, it is.
and the editors are writing stuff that they know is going to, or doing the headlines for stuff that they know is going to really resonate with some people and make other people angry, because I'd heard this a couple of years ago. Anger. So the online media space wants more viewers, so that there's more ads viewed, so they make more money.
Yep.
And they found that anger, posts, headlines, content that evokes anger has the biggest viral spread.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're going for. They're going for this polarization, because that's what's good for their business.
Yep.
That's what's good for their stock price, share price. That's what's good for their the money they get paid at the end of the year bonus. So how do we see through the program? Surely these questionnaires are one practical way that we can do stuff, but how do we see through our programming? How do we put this distance between who we are and what we've learned?
That is a really good question. I think that comes with time, practice, going to therapy if you feel like you need it. But, being able to sit and, examine ourselves, are we attracted to articles? Like, are we attached to always being angry all the time, right? Are we attached to being super opinionated, or, whatever it might look like or manifest to be? I think it's just learning that, you might not be happy where you are in your life, or how you're living. That's a huge one, you know?
Because isn't you said that according to Buddhist stuff, Buddhist stuff. That's not a very good word, is it?
Sorry, Buddha.
Attachment.
We love your Buddha stuff.
We don't love your Buddha stuff. Yeah. Buddha, we love your stuff. Attachment is the core of suffering.
Mhm.
It isn't. There's some the Buddha is clever. I think the teachings. I heard something yesterday saying that the Buddhist teaching is very wise, and it doesn't point to something called happiness. It
Mhm.
just talks about the end of suffering.
Yep.
So what does the end of suffering look like from your perspective? What's the end of suffering?
Oh, that's a heavy question. Well, I think it's
Yes, it is. Yeah.
it's
Sorry.
very heavy.
See what I did? I
Well,
lightened it up. Tried to put light.
It's okay. We love you, Buddha. Um, I think a lot of times it's accepting things for what they are, right? And stop trying to reach for something that may be unattainable. I'm a fan of I think it's Mark Mason, and he just posted a really good video. I think he was on somebody's podcast about, we're always on this treadmill in life. Like we're always looking for, if we just make more money, or, if we just lose 10 pounds, or if we just, got a different job. And we're always reaching for something more instead of just, accepting what we do have and making the best of it. And for me, in my perspective, I think that is what the answer is just being more accepting and grounded to what is, instead of all these things that we think is going to achieve, happiness or completeness.
Yeah. I'm listening to the Eckhart. Have you heard or read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle book? Come across that?
No, I don't think so.
The book's called The Power of Now, which obviously gels with your comment earlier on about being present. So The Power of Now is one. And I bought the audio book yesterday and started listening to it. It's quite heavy going, and so I've not been listening to it for more than about 20 minutes. But I found that I looked in my Amazon history, and I saw that I bought the book in May, so I think May 2008, and then in September I bought the CD. I bought the CD box set, so that's probably lost in some old car, with the CD changes. You remember when you had those CD changes? So yeah, the power of now. If people are looking for, stuff about being present, what treadmill do you see us adoptees on? You talked about.
Oh, I think, searching to fill that hole, that's probably never going to be filled, whatever it might be for a person, if it's a mother wound, if it's, family, if it's not being able to contact family, or family's passed away before you could find them, being accepted. I mean, there's many different things we're all kind of chasing, right?
Yeah, but what do you think they're made of, those?
Good question. I think it's kind of the overreaching, right? I find keeping it on the eye that, like the treadmill theory that, I just do this, or I just do that, or I just do whatever, and then you're going to feel better or different. But, accomplishing those things can bring more problems, bring different problems. And then once you get there, then you're going to be reaching for another goal, or be looking for something else to fill that void. So I think a lot of that time, I think people were kind of stuck in that whole fantasy mode where, if I found my biological family, everything will be different or better. And it, obviously doesn't work always that way. And it doesn't heal a person.
It looks to me, it feels like the common factor between the chap's name was Mark Mason, did you say?
I believe so. Look that up so I don't misquote.
Mark Mason and the treadmill.
Yeah, he was quoting a psychological theory, but yeah, he's a writer. Yeah. Writes a lot about.
So it seems to me that's that will be the treadmill is I'll be happy when.
Mm-hmm.
When X happens, or I'll be at peace, or I'll stop worrying when.
Mm-hmm.
It all seems to be future based.
Yeah, or it's contingent on someone else or something else.
It's definitely looking out. So it's looking to the future, or it's looking outside ourselves, or both, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to be internal work. I had to do a lot of internal work after finding my biological family, to go through all that, because this wasn't the holy grail answer, wasn't gonna make all my problems disappear.
Yeah. To what extent do you think people believe that? Adoptees believe that?
I think there's this fantasy, and not everybody has it as a kid. Some people have it when they're older. Some people just magically, one day decide that they want to look for their family. But a lot of people kind of have this fantasy where it's, if I just find my family, everything will be different, right? Or if I just find my family, it'll fix the way I feel. And I think there's just this kind of illusion that we have with ourselves, and it's really common for people to feel that way, that it'll just kind of everything will be different. And then you get to that point and, surprise, it doesn't fix everything, right?
So are people conscious of it, though? Because it's like, none of us like to think that we're stupid, do we? Like,
No,
nobody likes to
but
believe in fantasies. No one's we're grown-ups, for goodness sake. So I guess, like, do we admit it? To what extent do people admit it? To what extent are people conscious of it is one thing. To what extent do people will people admit it?
I think they will, but I think it depends how, ingrained it is in your mind, right? And do you talk to other people that have been through it or not been through it? Or do you feel, like, is this the only one way, right?
Yeah,
Versus is there another way to be on that journey?
because a lot of people will turn to, like this Rupert Spira guy, people will turn to other sources once they realize that that they haven't got the lasting peace that they wanted from X. Once X hasn't delivered, then I guess once X hasn't delivered, or once X hasn't delivered for on a number of on enough sufficient occasions, then they'll look somewhere else. So what we're saying is, look somewhere else now. Is that what we're saying?
I think it's important to think about all the options, right? Because it's not always going to turn out the way you want it to at the end of the day. I'm not saying don't go look for your family. If it's what you want to do, by all means, do go look for your family. Just don't believe that it's going to be a, fairy tale ending like all those TV shows they have.
Yeah.
That it's going to have its own issues and problems, and you'll learn a lot about yourself, but it's not going to be the healing journey that's going to fix everything.
So on your website, you've got this great quote by a lady called Helen Keller.
Yep.
And it says, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming of it.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you pick that, Emelia?
Because I feel we're so stuck on the suffering aspect, or we're so stuck on depression or whatever it might be that someone's suffering from, that it's important to remember that there's ways to overcome it, to deal with it, to be able to move on from it, so that you don't feel stuck in that hole.
Yeah. And is it because you call your counseling practice Courage for Change? So
Mm-hmm. And I think it takes a lot of courage to want to change life, right? To do things differently, to open up, to be more straightforward, and to look deeper into things that might be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And what do you find? Because it's not just adoptees that you serve. What trends what trends do you see? What things do you see across your adoptee versus your non-adoptee clients in terms of that courage, in terms of that openness, in terms of that willingness? What do you see?
I've seen a ton of more people going no contact with their family or lessening contact with their family, which I think is a great thing. If you have a toxic family and that's something that you want to heal yourself, that's a big trend. People trying to get out of toxic relationships, depression, adjustment, pretty
Yeah,
typical things that people struggle with. A lot of changes, at least here in the United States, a lot of people are moving to certain parts of the country. So I definitely work with a lot of people that have, completely uprooted their life to move somewhere else, whether it be for work or for family.
yeah. See, I would, out of the sort of things that you've outlined just there, I'd see a lot of, just me personally, I'd see more courage in cutting people off than looking for change internally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think depending on how you're attached to people, that it can manifest in different ways, because I think people don't feel open enough to resolving things, whether or not you have tried to resolve things with people in the past or not. That sometimes it's a lot easier just to cut people off. But if you have tried to resolve things or try to put boundaries, people don't honor them, then it takes to cut them off. There's usually a domino effect.
So I'm conscious of time. Is there anything that you'd like to share that I've not asked you about, Emelia?
No, I think we've covered a lot today.
Thanks a lot. Is there a title that comes to mind for the conversation, other than simply attachment?
I liked your quote you told me yesterday.
What was that one?
We need to focus on healing and less about trauma.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Yeah. Trauma informed, hope obsessed, or healing obsessed. Yeah. Or hope in the first instance, and then hope obsessed, and then into healing obsessed, I guess. Just the hope that there is, because there's so much darkness out there, as what was she called? Helen Keller?
Yeah.
As Helen Keller spotted, as the adoptee groups of Facebook are full, especially the big anonymous ones. The big anonymous ones. Have you come across Fireside Adoptees? Have you come across them? That's a Facebook group. They have their leadership meets in person and has a very strong vibe. We've had a few people on, like Amanda Baum from
that's cool.
From Fireside Adoptees, and that kind of stands out as a place that is looking for talking about trauma informed and healing obsessed. They are talking about people moving on. Some of the groups with tens of thousands of people on it is just trauma all the way around. And do not on any account post anything positive in there, or else you will be mowed down by probably best that I finish it there. Thank you, Emelia. Thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye.